Okay, welcome back, everyone. So coming up next, we'll have Cansu Kavili and Tyler Auerbeck, and they are site reliability engineers at Red Hat. They'll be talking about, so it's very easy to work with computers, but it's hard to work with people and make them talk. And they'll be getting deeper, also talking about error budgets and making it have like a better app because it has error on its name. Correct me if I'm wrong. And are you ready?
Yep.
Yeah, you can take it up then.
All right, thank you everybody. Welcome back to W2F's SRE. Today we're going to be talking about, as Lucas said, codifying innovation using error budgets to bridge your organizational divide. First, big thank you to all of the sponsors for letting us be here today to talk about.
Sorry, tech guys, please mute yourself.
And yeah, as Luke said, my name is Tyler Auerbeck. I am a consulting architect at Red Hat. Started off as a site reliability engineer and am now focusing more at the architect level of helping organizations figure out how to implement site reliability engineering within their teams, within their organization. Because it really is a team effort, right? Before all this COVID mess locked us all up in our houses, I was, big fan of travel, but mostly local travel now. So I've been spending a lot more time reading and hacking around on things, so I can do things like this. So I can go out and teach things, bring everyone in on things I'm looking at. Today, I'm joined by my colleague Cansu. I'll pass it over to Cansu to tell you a little bit about herself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Cansu. I'm a site reliability engineer at Red Hat's Open Innovation Labs team. And I would like to say thank you for the organizers to make this live, because that's the closest feeling that I get being face-to-face for these conferences lately. And I also would like to thank for giving us a chance to put my Red Hat on, because I love putting it on, and that's a great...
Sorry, Ricardo, please mute yourself. We can still hear you.
Okay, sorry. So I was just would like to say thanks for this great team, because that's an opportunity for me to put my hat on, and this is what I like to do. And I also like emojis and GIFs, so you will see a lot of them throughout the slides. Hope you enjoy. Okay, so let's start. Why are we talking about error budgets? So in Open Innovation Labs at Red Hat, we work closely with our customers to build cross-functional teams and establish open culture and processes within their product teams, and also at organizations within various levels. So one of the things that we really like to focus on with them is bootstrapping SRE mindset with their product team. And we believe that speaking about SRE practices, sharing how we apply them, and how these practices can help to shape the next steps, and given real life examples. Given real life examples of what we see in the field are really beneficial for our customers and for the community as well. And apparently SRE is its golden age. I mean, just look at this conference. There are more than 3,000 people already registered, I think. So it seems like that this is all anyone is talking about lately. And I'm sure that you've been hearing all these SLIs, SLOs, error budgets, all these practices around. And this is great. This is really great. We really want to encourage these. These practices to be in use. But we also want to make sure that they are used for good, not for evil. And this is why we are here today. We want to talk about how you can use error budgets to help create a shared understanding and vision for your organization and shape it better. So let's start with what is error budgets. And we've been seeing fires all day since the conference has started. And I think we are all agree that incidents can happen. I mean, there is no such thing as 100% reliability. And I believe none of us also promise this to our customers, to our end users. That's why you see a bunch of nines around, like 99% availability, 99.5, 99.9, etc. And you see this either as a goal or objective that we set for our services in order to meet our end users' expectations, keep them happy, or contractual agreements between us and our customers. Like you can say that I keep my service up 99% of the time throughout the years, or 99% of API requests that come into my service should be successful, because that's what I need to do in order to keep my user happy. And we do our best to keep these promises, right? So what happens? You keep that promise. Nothing. It's just great. You keep your promise. You've been up this all time. But should you try to overachieve it, or should you try to top it up to 100%? You should ask yourself, do your customer really expect 100 availability, even though you just agreed on 99%? So that's where error budget term kicks in. That extra 1% or that extra 0.1%, that is an error budget that you and your teams can spend to take risks, right? So in another word, an error budget is the maximum amount of time that your system or your service can fail without consequences, because that is what you and your customer agreed. And please don't see that just another metric in DevOps world. This is a metric shows that you keep your promise, and now you have an opportunity to try something. You have an opportunity to innovate. And it's easier to innovate when everyone has on the same page, right? When everyone has a shared understanding, and there's a shared understanding amongst the team. Especially, and unfortunately, we see this a lot in our in some companies. Like, there are development teams who wants to go fast, who wants to deliver all these new shiny features, and there are also operations or platform teams that's really concerns about stability. So you can see this budget as a allowed time that you can spend to do experiments in order to minimize the real incidents. You can agree on this as different teams. And that's why our budget says that using error budgets to bridge our organizational gap. And we will talk about how we can use error budgets for good. But unfortunately, we will start some don't try this at home examples.
Absolutely. Thank you, Cansu. As Cansu mentioned, error budgets are really about that extra amount of time. Once you determine, hey, our service needs to be up and available and reliable for this amount of time, whatever that leftover amount of time that gets you to that 100% of time is what you have to work with, right? And sometimes that's just, depending on how intense it is, maybe that's just a few minutes, right? Or sometimes it's, hey, it's hours. Maybe you only have a service that needs to be up 9 to 5, kind of support some office workers. Then you have all this extra time to figure out how to do things. And what we see a lot of time, Cansu and I are kind of consultants. We go out and work with various customers on how to implement this within their organizations, within their businesses. And a lot of what we see is folks that are kind of like in the beginning of their journey. They don't have a lot of experience with error budgets. They're very early on. And generally speaking, you'll find folks who have picked up a few of the SRE books from Google and thought to themselves, error budget, great. This sounds like a tool that I can use to make my problems someone else's problem. And to that, I usually find myself looking like our friends here in this picture. The problem we find when working with teams that are, that are new to error budgets is that error budgets has bad marketing. I mean, it has error in the name. To most of the world, you see error and you're like, bad, avoid it. Use this thing to handle just the bad things. But I don't think that's the case. In my opinion, that's not the case. It's just your way about thinking about how you use this practice. So as Cansu mentioned, let's start with where we've seen error budgets kind of used in anger. The first one here that we kind of run into a lot is what I like to refer to as the error budget countdown, which also kind of results in this pager hot potato, on-call hot potato. And it says, the scenario kind of goes like, looks like, they look at the watch, looks like we burnt that budget to go. It's about that time again. Here you go, your problem. It's just these teams, usually like a dev team or an ops team, just saying like, we burnt the budget, your problem, you deal with all this stuff now. And a lot of times it's not even one team like trying to make things better. It's really just like, it's that same problem we've been having. We're not even really fixing or patching the problem. It's more about what is the minimum amount of bubble gum and duct tape I can apply to this thing to make things green again, so that I can just hand all these problems over to the other side because we burnt the budget. And this is absolutely just a situation where you have teams that are not communicating well at all, and it shows that there's an issue with the culture, with the communication in an organization, that they're not aligned on a common goal. Nothing ever gets better. And it's just about passing that pain back and forth every day until we encounter a new set of problems. And then the cycle starts over again, just passing things back and forth. And really, this is insanity. This type of implementation is what I like to call just process theater. It looks like we're doing a thing, someone read the book, some CTO, some VP said, hey, I read this book on site reliability engineering. So we're going to do site reliability engineering now. And one of those things is error budget. So we better be using error budgets. So it looks like the thing that we're doing, but underneath your business actually isn't gaining any value from it. And actually you're just adding a bunch of overhead to people who are probably already burnt out, and you're kind of just looking to maintain the status quo, and you're stressing out the people, the underlying people who support your business. And some argue that, hey, well, we got to start somewhere, fake it till you make it. But if this isn't rectified in short order from when you kind of start faking it until you make it, it is a very large negative to your organization. You'll just add this additional burden to your people without gaining any value. And you might argue that we're reducing, we're not adding load, we're reducing the load because we're sharing the pain, we're sharing that pain between multiple teams. But remember, error budgets aren't free. There's a lot of upfront work that you have to get all of your metrics. You have to get, the math that kind of goes behind supporting your error budgets. This thing isn't free. There's a lot of work that goes into establishing the who, what, when, how, and the systems to keep track of all this stuff. So yeah, you're spreading things between teams, but you're also doing a lot of upfront work to get to a point where you have error budgets. And the only real value that comes from a process like this is for people like me and Cansu. When we come in and we're looking to help and improve processes, this is a clear indicator that there is smoke. And where there is smoke, appropriately for this conference, there's fire. There's and this is really an indicator for Cansu and I to dig in. Hey, there's something going wrong here. This isn't how these words don't mean what you think they mean. The second case here, and this is a direct quote from an engagement that I was on, is how can we weaponize error budgets to encourage better software quality, to encourage better behavior? And the first thing I want to call out is this still gives me chills to this day, because first off, we're dealing with software, we're dealing with machines, we're dealing with running applications. There's a small percentage of folks who are dealing with something as awful as as war and weapons and all this good stuff. So like, let's pump the brakes on organizing like error budgets and things like that around like, hey, how do we weaponize? How do we kind of get away from this us versus them mentality? And really, the second horrible thing about this is like, think about this. In this scenario, we have folks who are looking to actively punish various team members across teams and on their own teams. In this case, it was the infrastructure manager looking to beat up on the poor devs. It's always looking to beat up on the poor devs, right? His team was perfect, so of course all the problems had to originate somewhere else. They were just playing cleanup for others. So what arrangement could he put in place where he could beat these other teams into submission, right? The old pirate mantra of like the beatings will continue until morale improves. And I get it. From his point, he likely had good intentions. He's looking out for his team, right? But again, this is the us versus them mentality. At the end of the day, you're all one team. You're all working for the same place. He wanted to make their lives better, but removing error budgets from the equation here. Organizations, like I said, are made up of people, like maybe some robots, right? But mostly people. And regardless, we need to remember that at the end of the day, we are dealing with people. This is just the mentality. This mentality, this us against them mentality doesn't lead anywhere. It just burns people out around you. And then once you start burning those people out, the cycle starts fresh because new people come in behind the ones you burn out, and you just keep doing the thing, and it never gets you to the desired result. Error budgets should not be used as kind of the punishment hammer of your organization. We should not make them, we should not wield them against the others to make them pay. This is yet another sign that Cansu and I really like to look for, because this is showing that there's kind of disorganization between the teams. And error budgets, they shouldn't be used in anger like this. They should be used to help unite your teams towards a common goal. They should, keep working, build that empathy between teams to work towards that common goal. And that's really at the core of what we want to talk about today. So now that we've shown you some of our nightmares, those are two of like the most common scenarios that we've seen. Let's talk about the behavior that we want to see, the thing that we want to encourage. Let's talk about the good parts, right? Kind of like the think about this as a movie. It's like in a world gone mad, we see teams passing blame back and forth until the day that their product dies, or the new product comes and they have to start this whole thing over again. But then there's one practice that can help save them all: error budgets. If used appropriately, it can really help align your organization on what it is that you want to do. You can help build a cohesive team across kind of like the traditional silos. You know, you build a single team as an organization instead of, oh, this is the dev team, oh, this is the ops team. It can help teams realize the actions that they can take to bring everyone internally and their customers real value. And we want to help everyone realize that the error budgets don't need to be the game of corporate hot potato. It doesn't need to be the Punisher. It can be the thing that helps excite your teams. They can use it to figure out when to deploy the shiny new thing. We can use it to do the fun, the cool things. But how do we get there, right? And kind of the one thing I really want to kind of get to here is like, the first thing to think about is really it's just bad marketing. You know, like I said in the beginning, error budgets have error in the name. So people want to add this, they automatically assign this kind of negative implication to it. And, you know, really, you know, let's spin this on its head. Let's talk about them in a positive way. Talk about the good things we can do. When implementing them and crafting your error budgets, look to implement them and word them in a way, you know, there are a lot of numbers. So you can't make numbers like look happy, right? But when you're talking about them to your teams, when you're developing them and the words around the numbers, word them in a way that helps breed positivity and pushes the team in a direction of kind of like infectious enthusiasm towards a shared goal. Start talking about these things from whatever point makes most sense to you, whether those are SLOs or SLAs. You know, it's a lot easier to you know, depending on where your organization sits, to lean them in one direction, base them on one thing. You know, the important thing is getting the conversation started in the right direction. And because as the old saying goes, and, you know, Luke's kind of led with, you know, tech is the easy thing. Figuring out people and how to get them motivated and moving in the right direction can be incredibly complicated.
Yeah, because in the end, like you said, all we aim is to deliver value to our end users, to our customer, and do it in a reliable way. It's shared understanding amongst the team. So let's see how we can do that. So getting the teams to a point where they feel like they are working together instead of against each other is critical here. And like Tyler said, error budgets isn't free, and there are a lot of prior works to be done in order to determine our error budgets. Or like I think it is. I think we can't miss without calling out Alex Hidalgo and his famous SLO books here. As Alex Hidalgo said in his book, it's error budgets are the final part of the reliability stack. So there are still a lot of works that in order to get your budget, because we just not come up with all these 99% availabilities or 95% availabilities just because we think it's good enough or because that we think that our customers would be happy with it. There are some stuff we need to do. So I'm not going to dump you all these famous letters like SLIs, SLOs, etc. But in order to define good error budgets, you need to know what your customers' expectation. You need to understand your customers, and in order to do that, you can start by asking questions about your user's journey. Like you can map out your users' critical journeys, but you can start asking questions like, how are my users interacting with my service, or what are they would like to achieve, accomplish by just using my service. And you need to do it together with people from product side, people from business side, people from technical side, developments and operations. This is not something that only your developers or SREs can decide. This is something you need to come up with all together in order to understand what should be your objective, what should be your what is your customer expectations, and then you can decide what is your objective for this particular service, for your services. So you can define what is your customer expectation, and you can define your objectives. And these objectives should be really simple and clear objectives. This should be like plain English. Like after you understand what are your customers' expectations, you can say that in order to make them happy, I make sure that this HTTP calls should take minimum 100 milliseconds. So that my customers are not cranky. So you need to have this like plain simple, because you wouldn't want your developers or SREs trying to figure out how to measure this objective. And you didn't want them to mess around with to understand if they still have budget to try something. And then you need to look for the metrics that are closest to your customers, so that the data would be a representative of your customer's experience. Remember that the value doesn't come from you running the server. Value comes from the other end, from the customer and how they utilize your service. And when you have clear objectives and when you have a right way to measure it, you get your budgets. Well, you get your time left to play, to try to innovate and test something new. And but I'm sure that you've heard this throughout the conferences, that SRE is a journey and error budget is also a journey. So you need to observe and iterate if you get your customer right, if you understand them right, and if you are hitting your objectives. So you need to constantly looking at these and validate them. You should get into a product mindset here, like in your own, like in other products.
And you know, kind of building off of that is, you know, if, you know, again, just focusing on the people side of this is, you know, taking the tech bit out of this is, you know, budgets are budgets, whether it's a fiscal budget or an error budget, like we're talking about. You don't always get to buy the thing that you want right away, right? And but at the same time, you don't get bonus points for having leftover budget at the end of the month. You know, we want to be able to, what we want isn't always necessarily what we need. We want to be able to focus on the shiny new thing and focus on strategically burning our budget for good, right? We want to do the good things. But bills are bills, man. Sometimes you have technical debt that needs taken care of. And again, this is perfectly fine. And that's exactly what the budget's there to be used for. You know, use that budget to take care, you know, to chisel away at you know, the kind of existing debt that you have when you're first getting started. But you know, as leaders and team members, reinforce that's okay, and we're in this together to make things better. Because once we make things better, you know, this kind of gets into the idea of cross-functional teams. But you know, just don't rely on the devs to do the dev work and SREs to do the infra work. You know, one thing, you know, I want to make clear is, like, SREs are not just your sysadmins and a fly new code, right? You know, let the people who have the availability and skill sets to get the job done, whether that's, you know, traditional devs doing the dev work or SREs, you know, kind of chipping in and being able to help, you know, make some of these things better. At the end of the day, we want to be able to use that budget for the shiny new things, that thing that we need to take a little bit of downtime for, but we don't necessarily, you know, have a great way to do without there being some kind of noticeable downtime to the users. And sometimes we can use different deployment strategies to make these transparent and avoid using our budget when we don't have to, which again gives us more budget to use on the shinier, more disruptive things. But always remember, on the flip side of this is, don't always say like, oh, we've got leftover budget, let's burn all of it. You kind of have to be strategic about it, because if you get overzealous, like just like emergency medical bills, right? You know, sometimes unexpected things happen, and that you have to have a little bit of budget for kind of like the rainy day fund when things go very wrong. Yeah, you can plan to purposely burn the budget if you have it, but also make sure you got a little bit left over just in case, because sometimes you get a little excited, use it on the cool new shiny thing, and then fire, right? Fire everywhere. And at the end of the day, if that comes up, you know, some your users are going to be upset. But to really, you know, bring this thing home, what do we want to send everyone home with? Are kind of four key things. And if you're sitting here thinking to yourself, oh, this sounds like a lot of, hey, we just have to talk to our people and get people in the right mindset. Thank you for coming to our TED Talk. You know, the one thing I want to drive home here is, you know, error budgets, they've got a lot of numbers behind them, a lot of, you know, kind of math that kind of be intimidating to people. But at the end of the day, this is a people process. This is not a tech tool. You know, we can all install tech tools. We do this all the time. But the people part of this is super hard, because you have to get people in the right mindset. You have to find out how to encourage them. So one thing I encourage is, you know, just better marketing for error budgets. Words absolutely matter. If you build an error budget with the intent of making things not your problem, your teams will inherit that mindset. And if you ensure that the wording you use, but if you ensure that the wording that you use is positive, and make it for good, it's a way that likely your teams will adopt that mentality as well. One thing I like to say is, remember, even supervillains have origin stories. So if you start out with an evil mindset, you're building a supervillain, not a superhero. Make sure you don't fall into that trap.
And lastly, I just would like to say that you did all this marketing, you did all this maths behind. Make sure that you use it. You have that time. That error budget is important for it. Don't let it to sit as another extra work or process for you to do it, because this helps you to build a shared understanding for expectation of your customers amongst the teams. So just make sure that you use it for good and you use it to bring better value for your customers.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, making sure that we're building towards common goal is the thing that we're all here to do. Try to break down those silos, make sure that you're building these cross-functional teams that are all building towards a common goal, because that's really where you want your business to go. But with that, we really just want to say thank you for coming to this talk. Thank you for giving us a chance to talk about Air Budgets and how we like to see this as a people process, and really work to give Air Budgets a better marketing team here. If you want to talk more about this, hear about some of the nightmares we've heard, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to us. We got our Twitter handles right there. Feel free to reach out directly to us. We love to talk about this stuff.
Yeah,
if you're interested in more of these stories, or talking about your own story, this is what we do here at Open Innovation Lab. So feel free to reach out, and we're more than happy to talk to everyone about this. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening.
Awesome. Really like the talk. I think that it was very sober, like a very sober look at SRE and Air Budgets. Very lighthearted. I really love the conversational format, and yeah, very nice. I got some questions here. So the first one, if you're to convince a client on our organization which have no idea about Air Budgets, what is the best way to explain it?
Chauncey, before I keep talking, I like to talk. Chauncey, do you have any opinions here?
Well, the customer expectation is the key. Meeting with customer expectation is key here. So in order to do that, what I do usually with customers, that I would have some sort of whiteboard session and talk about what my users expect by using my service. What are they hoping to accomplish, and draw their user journeys, how they use my service, what are the parts they interact, and then that's help us to focus on which parts that customer directly interact and how much available they should be, what exactly customers are doing with those services, and then walk through there, like this service is important, this should be available like this amount of time because that's how customers are using our service, and then walk from there. And you'll see that your customers also not expecting 100% availability from you all the time. They also understand that incidents can happen. So this is where I usually start. I'll put all the necessary people into one room, business, product, devs, operations, etc., and discuss what is the best ways for our customers' experience to how to deliver this one, and what is that math logic behind it.
Yeah, and one thing I really like to dig into, and Chauncey, the way you kind of look at it is from the product perspective, but the way that I like to look at it, especially when a customer is like, hey, we don't know what this is, but we know that we want to do it, is, all right, cool. You say you want to do the thing, but are you ready to do the thing? Some organizations just aren't set up for their teams to interact like that. So there's a lot of work that needs to go to breaking down the old silos, the old brick walls that have been put up so that these teams don't see each other, and encourage them to work together. Sometimes you need to start real small. Hey, on these types of problems, this is how we're going to handle them. But it can't just be between the two teams that are doing the thing, because it always happens, right? Whenever the air budget gets, whenever you start doing these things, and then the air budget gets burnt, and then you have to tell the VP or the CTO or the product owner that, hey, we're not shipping new features because we just need to keep the lights on. We need to keep things stable here. That's the problem. And then the CTO comes in and says, like, nope, we're going to do it, and that's that. Overridden. If the whole organization isn't bought into it and recognize that, hey, this is going to be our way of working, that is a difficult, like, it's, again, process theater, because, hey, we're doing all these things, we're doing all this overhead to collect these metrics and understand what our users need. But then at the end of the day, we're just going to pitch them because I need to get this feature out. So really, you need to look at the organization of whether this is even something that they're capable of, and that this is something that the whole organization wants to do. You can start small with your MVP of like how this would look, but if you're not going to kind of enforce that, then there's not a lot of value there, right? So I always like to look at it from that perspective.
Cool, thanks. We have another question, but I think we are running over time, Leon, right?
I think we have 5 minutes before the panel starts, so we still have 5 minutes.
Okay, so the next question is, would you consider some types of downtime to be like free in terms of Air budget? And then the example is like a major ISP goes down or something like that.
yeah, I'm gonna get scorched for this because I've got opinions that people don't agree with. I consider that there can be sometimes you can hide. There are strategies, right? And they're not always great strategies. Sometimes you can hide your downtime behind with different deployment strategies, right? You can be taking things down at the same time you're bringing other things up, and then it doesn't look like there's downtime. It's kind of transparent to the user. And those types of things I consider free downtime because, hey, to the user, everything was working. I didn't get any kind of negative interaction. We're in good shape. $0. But then sometimes there are strategies like, hey, I can hide my downtime behind someone else's downtime. They can't get to me, so they don't know that I'm down. And this is where Twitter will haunt me for saying this, but like sometimes you just need to be strategic and you need to be crafty. Sometimes hey, I've burnt all my error budget, but if this is down and they can't find me anyways, hey, I can hop on board the downtime train, and it's not me. And that should not be your primary strategy, but sometimes you have to get creative, and being creative is good. We all like being creative.
Yes. Cool. Thanks. The last thing, some people are asking also for slides. So if you can just share on Twitter.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll definitely be publishing them. I'm assuming we'll be sending them to someone, but if not, we'll definitely put them out there so folks can find them.
Okay, and if people want to reach you, so Twitter is an
Twitter,
option.
Slack, GitHub, anywhere.
Yeah,
they
Twitter,
can find
GitHub.
it.
Yeah, it's all the same handle for me at least.
Perfect. Okay, so thanks a lot for this. And coming up next, we'll have a panel, I think on track 1. It's about SRE, DevOps, and culture, and it's a discussion about that. Besides that, I'd like to say thanks to our sponsors. Let me thank you, Cisco, Istana, Epsagon, PagerDuty, Teleport, NS1, Blameless, Tira, Catchpoint, Stackpulse, and HashiCorp. And also Container Solutions, and also for paying our salaries. So,
and
yeah.
also Maddie Stratton says hi.
Oh, yeah.
And they really like your hat as well.
Yeah.
Thanks for the props. I really like them.
Reminds them of the hats from KubeCon Europe 2017, apparently.
Oh.
Cool. All right. So thanks all for joining. We'll be taking a short break and heading over to the panel discussion, right?
Yeah, on track 1.
Have a nice conference, everyone. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Take care.